Okay, so this video is going to be Food and Health IB Geography, the merits of a systems approach, inputs towards transfers outputs to compare energy efficiency and water footprints in food production and relative sustainability in different places. So this is a systems approach to farming which has physical inputs, cultural inputs, economic inputs, and behavioral elements. Those are all considered inputs into the decision-making processes by individual farmers or groups of farmers, or the state. And then you have like the kind of processes. So this is kind of the processes in the system, patterns of land use. And then you have your outputs, animals, crops, and then from the outputs comes input. Okay, so there's basically three scenarios. There's either income from your outputs equals the cost of input, so your cost equals your profit or your revenue. And then you have your profit, like your revenue exceeds your cost, so then you make a profit and you have wealth. That leads to negative feedback, so you can like feed that back into the system and like keep regenerating it. Or your revenue is less than the cost that you put into the actual thing, so then you get a loss, and that gives positive feedback, which is a loss to the system and leads to environmental damage as well. So this is kind of more disequilibrium rather than maintaining the equilibrium. Okay, so energy efficiency ratio is a measure of the amount of energy put into a system compared with the output. Yeah. So here's an example. Putting these from most to least efficient would be this order here. So shifting cultivation would be most efficient, whereas coastal fishing would be least efficient. So it's basically like this idea of these ratios of inputs to outputs. Okay, so it is also calculated by outputs divided by energy inputs. Higher values are more efficient in this case. However, apart from fertilizers, treatments, and harvesting, energy is also used in other stages of food production, such as processing, packaging, transportation, distribution, and preparation by the consumer. So in that case, energy efficiency ratio may not be as relevant if you take into account all these other factors where you could be inefficient as well. There's also water footprints, which aren't really taken into account in energy efficiency ratios. Like a lot of these types of foods use a lot of water in their production, especially meat, dairy, chocolate. Here again, you have large carbon footprints for cocoa beans, coffee, and you can kind of just see how they decrease over time and change, and how much water they consume and everything like that. And here's moving on to types of farming. So there's traditional systems, shifting cultivation, nomadic herding, semi-commercial systems, cropping and mixed cultivation. Then you have commercial systems, perennial crops, and livestock rearing. And okay, so I'll give more like clear definitions. So there's all these different types of farming. Subsistence farming, only produce enough to feed themselves and their family without having any more to sell for profit. This is the most common type of farming in LADCs, and some of them are nomadic, meaning they move around the country, and that's what shifting cultivation is, as mentioned here. And then you have pastoral farming, which is the raising of animals, usually on land which is less favorable to arable farming, as arable farming is like the raising of just plants. And then you have commercial farming, which takes place on a large profit-making scale. They seek to maximize their yields per hectare, so they just want to be like producing as much as they can and kind of in the most efficient way. Extensive farming is carried out on large plots of land or on large-scale farms, usually requiring the use of machinery and harvesting crops of corn, maize, or wheat. Intensive farming is relatively small scale and depends on high yields requiring large amounts of labor. So those are all the types of farming, and again here is the systems approach which you need to know according to this syllabus statement.